Shalom, one and all. I do hope this little blog finds you all well. I'm going to be doing my annual Christmas blog. Forgive me, it is, I don't want to say long, but it's probably going to be about a half hour. I'll try and get through it quick. I know some of you are going to be with your families. And I want to preface it by saying, first of all, I'm not doing this little blog, podcast, whatever you want to call it, to rebuke you. I'm not doing this to condemn you. I'm not challenging your salvation. I'm doing this because it's biblical. I have to do it. I'm a rabbi. I'm a teacher. I teach the word. What do you want? And this is very, very important to me to get out information so that everyone will understand what the scripture says and be able to be scripturally obedient. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or even if you're going to tune in later, I am Messianic Rabbi Henry Morse from Congregation Sha'ar Hashemayim. Don't mind the mess behind me. My office is a little untidy right now. I haven't done a podcast in a while. I've been busy. So let's get on with it and let's get going. So I've entitled this podcast, The Sin of Jeroboam. So work with me and let's get through it and see if we can do this quickly. I might have to raise the font size so I can read it a little better. Ready? Let's go. So in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 12, we see the son of Rehoboam takes rule. The son of Solomon. I can't read it, it's too small. The son of Solomon, Rehoboam, takes rule over the united Israel. Israel is not split at that time. You have had Saul rule, you've had David rule, now you've had Solomon rule, and now his son, after the rule, excuse me, a little lingering cold, after the rule of Solomon and the death of Solomon, Rehoboam, he takes rule in the United Kingdom of Israel after his father's death. The outcome is not that good for him, though, as he decides to take the poor counsel of his contemporaries instead of the wisdom of the elders in his kingdom. So let's read 1 Kings 12:1. Then Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. Now when Jeroboam, and it was actually, his name would have been pronounced Jeroboam, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, because there's no J sound in Hebrew, just as an aside, the son of Nebat, heard of it. He was living in Egypt, for he was yet in Egypt, where he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, because Jeroboam had been in disobedience and rebelled against Solomon, so he was now in Egypt, in, I guess, hiding. They sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, saying, your father made our yoke hard. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you. Then he said to them, depart for 3 days, and then return to me. So the people departed. King Rehoboam consulted with the elders who had served his father Solomon while he was still alive, saying, how do you counsel me to answer this people? Then he spoke to him, saying, if you'll be a servant to this people, that this is the elders, today, and will serve them and grant them their petition and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever. So they were admonishing him, be a nice guy, don't be a schmendrick, don't make the burden as bad as your father. But he forsook the counsel of the elders which they had given him, and consulted with the young men who grew up with him and served him. So he said to them, what counsel do you give that we may answer this people who have spoken to me, saying, lighten the load which your father put on us? The young men who grew up with him spoke to him, saying, thus you shall say to this people who spoke to you, saying, your father made our yoke heavy. Now you make it lighter for us, but you shall speak to them, my little finger is thicker than my father's loins, which is kind of a curious expression, and I'll try and be as gracious as I can in my interpretation. He's basically saying that he's going to put upon them a heavier yoke, and that his little pinky was thicker and bigger than my father's manhood, and that was pretty good. I got out of that really good. He's basically saying I'm a bigger man, I'm a better man than my father was, and my male body part. My little finger is bigger than my father's male body part. All right, that was pretty good. Someone sent me a couple of nice little, I guess, thumbs up for that, for doing a good job with that. So, so let me get back to my. All right. So he says, I will. Whereas my father loaded you with a heavy yoke, and I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. All right, you can get the metaphor. You understand what that is. I'm basically going to be harsh. Then Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam on the third day, as the king had directed, saying, return to me on the third day. The king answered the people harshly, for he forsook the advice of the elders which they had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. My glasses aren't working so good anymore. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of events from the Lord, that he might establish his word, which the Lord spoke through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So as a result, Jeroboam, who was in exile, as we said earlier, in Egypt for rebellion against Solomon, it also rebelled against the rule of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and took with him the northern 10 tribes and split the country. And this is the beginning of the divided kingdom, the country of Israel and the country of Judah. The 10 tribes went with him, and with Rehoboam, he kept Judah, which is the largest of all tribes. He kept Benjamin, and he kept the Levites, which they didn't have an inheritance in the land because they were given over for the service of the Lord, and wherever they were allowed to bring their sheep and their cattle, they could get a portion of land in whatever tribe they settled in. Again, forgive me for having this little cough. It's been lingering all fall. 1 Kings 11:29, it came about, 1 Kings 11:29, that when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonite, found him on the road. Now, Ahijah had clothed himself with a new cloak, and both of them were alone in the field. Then Ahijah took the new cloak, which was on him, and tore it into 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, or as you know him as Jeroboam, take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord, the Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, meaning the father of Rehoboam, Solomon, and give you the 10 tribes. And this is in parentheses. Remember, anytime you see something in parentheses, that means it's a scribal notation. It doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, but it was added later on by a scribe as I guess, a commentary. But he will have one tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen from all the tribes of Israel. All right, 1 Kings 11:33, back to the text. Because they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab. Chemosh was the fire god. Moab of Moab, and Milcom, and the god of the sons of Ammon. And they have not walked in my ways, doing what is right in my sight, and observing my statutes and my ordinances as his father David did. So they're being rebuked because of the fact that they refused to obey the Lord of Israel, who redeemed them from Egypt, redeemed them with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and as David did. And of course, now we have Rehoboam is going to lose his place as the king of the united Israel, and Jeroboam is going to get the northern tribes. Now, here's the thing. There's a promise that's given to him. He receives that promise from the prophet, and he's told that if he obeys and does the right thing, he'll be blessed, and the Lord would increase his rule. So he says, I think I already read this. Again, this is small print, so you'll forgive me for kind of goobering out of my eyes here. Nevertheless, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I'll make him a ruler all the days of his life for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, who observed my commandments and my statutes. So what he's saying there is, I will not take the entire kingdom from him. I will leave a portion of the kingdom for him, which ends up becoming Judah, for the sake of the promises he made to David. But I will take the kingdom from his son's hand and give it to you, even the 10 tribes. Now the promise is that he's going to give the northern tribes to Jeroboam. But to his son I will give one tribe, that my servant David may have a lamp always before me in Jerusalem, the city where I have chosen for myself to put my name. I will take you, and you shall reign over whatever you desire, and you shall be king over Israel. Then it will be that if you listen to all that I command you, and walk in my ways, to halakha, in the ways of the Lord, and do what is right in my sight, by observing my statutes and my commandments. There were very specific commandments that the king had to do. He wasn't allowed to build up horses and stables, and he wasn't allowed to worship the false gods, and he had to make a copy of the Torah for himself and read it all the days of his life. There were a number of different things that he was commanded to do for the blessing of the people, for the blessing of the kingdom. And we'll see what he does from here on in. He says, and do what is right in my sight by observing the statutes, my commandments, as my servant David did. Then I will be with you and build you an enduring house, as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. So he has a promise, and the promise is that he can have the 10 northern kingdoms, and he would actually have an inheritance, an amazing inheritance, and a leadership among Israel. He says, thus I will afflict the descendants of David for this, but not always. So again, the curse of Rehoboam is not going to be forever. He's going to eventually restore the kingdom back to David's descendant, which ends up being, of course, Messiah, Yeshua. And now we are in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 40. Solomon sought therefore to put, did I miss a part? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Forgive me. 11:39. Thus I will affect the descendants of David for this, but not always. Now we are in 11:40. Solomon sought therefore to put Jeroboam to death, but Jeroboam arose and fled to Egypt, to Shishak, king of Egypt, and he was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Again, because of the promise that was given him in the kingdom, as well as the rebellion of Jeroboam against the rule of Solomon. So here we are. It doesn't look good for either of them. And of course, neither Rehoboam nor Jeroboam make the decision to serve the Lord, and the kingdom is split, and the rest is history. And may I say, not a good history at that. So we are now in 1 Kings 12:16. When all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now look after your own house, David. So Israel departed to their tents. But as for the sons of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So anyone who was left in Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. But the northern kingdom at this point split. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the forced labor, and all Israel stoned him to death. So these are the forced laborers who were to build the king's house and his palaces and any other projects that he had to deal with in his reign. And so, of course, where was I? Don't go anywhere. Again, small print. King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the forced labor, and all of Israel stoned him. So he sent him out as an emissary to make sure that he enforced what was to be obeyed by the king, and they stoned him. He didn't do so good. All right, put him to death. And King Rehoboam made haste to mount his chariot and flee to Jerusalem. Of course, now he realizes he cannot get total control back of his kingdom, and then he goes to Jerusalem because he knows it's safe there. And he's not going to be able to now rule over a united kingdom. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. Verse 19, verse 20 now, came about when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, that they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all of Israel. But the tribe of Judah followed the house of David. It was actually Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Now when Rehoboam had come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah. Now remember, when they use the term Judah, they're using that as a covering for all of the southern tribes. It is called actually Judah. And just like you'll find many words that you'll see, David is called our father David, Abraham our father. Well, obviously I'm a descendant of Abraham, but he's not my father. But it's used as a generic covering for the nation of Israel. You see that happening in many different cases. They'll use an ancestor and his name to make a covering for the entire generation. So they made him, none but the tribe of Judah followed the house of David. Now, when Rehoboam had come, verse 21, to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, as I said, 180,000 chosen men who were warriors to fight against the house of Israel, the northern kingdom, that is, the kingdom, and to restore the kingdom to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. He was trying to, of course, wage war against the northern kingdoms, the northern kingdom, for the purpose of getting control again. But the word of the Lord came to Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, speak to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, to all the house of Judah, and to Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, saying, thus says Jehovah, you must not go up and fight against your relatives, the sons of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing has come to me. So they listened to the word of the Lord and returned and went their way according to the word of the Lord. So they didn't go to war against each other because the Lord spoke to him through a prophet. When Jeroboam enters his rule, Jeroboam is now in his own kingdom. He does something totally contrary to what the Lord commanded and to the instructions that were given to him. And so he makes up new rules to solidify his control over the northern 10 tribes. And so instead of listening to the words of the prophet and sealing his place and his kingdom, he decides, I'll make it up. I like it. I want to keep control. So I'd rather do it my way. He repeated Frank Sinatra. He was listening to too many Frank Sinatra albums. I don't know if they do albums anymore. Let's just go ahead and say CDs. Okay. Then Jeroboam, what does he do? He builds Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim. He's up in the north and lived there, and he went out from there to build Penuel. Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will return to the house of David. Now he was afraid because he didn't want them going back to Jerusalem to worship the Lord. So he decides that he's going to come up with a new plan. If this people go up to offer sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, is what he says, then the heart of this people will return to their Lord, even to Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, the king of Judah. So he doesn't like this, and he decides he wants to not obey the word of the Lord and make up his own rules so that he can solidify his kingdom in his own eyes. Sounds like almost like King Ahaz in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7. If you go over that, you'll see making allegiances with foreign countries. Instead of listening to Isaiah, who prophesies that the Lord would protect him, he decides he wants to make allegiances with foreign kings for the purpose of sustaining his own rule. Someday I'll teach on that, not now, for the sake of time. So the king consulted and made 2 golden calves. Now, these weren't calves from the knee down. These were cow calves. That's a stupid joke I say in my congregation. So he made 2 golden calves and said to them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold your gods, O Israel, that brought you up from the land of Egypt. So now he ascribes to these golden calves that these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. That's bad juju. He is actually calling them Jehovah. He's actually, and Aaron did the same thing when he made the golden calf, and he said, this is the God that took you out of Egypt. He's calling these calves, these golden calves, which goes directly against the second command in Exodus 20, thou shalt, have no graven images before you. He decides he wants to make a graven image, and then to make it even worse, he ascribes to these golden images, these calves, that they are the ones who brought them out of Egypt. I mean, the audacity, think of that. I wouldn't want to be around him when the lightning struck. He said, O Israel, these are the gods that brought you up from the land of Egypt. He set one in Bethel, and one he put in Dan. I've been to that archaeological site in Dan, and it's pretty amazing that it's still not the temple, but the foundation is still standing. And it's way up north in the northeast area of Israel. And so if you go up there and take a tour to Israel, you'll see it. This is an archaeological fact. It happened. It's historical. It's archaeological. It's wonderful to see that we can prove that these stories are not just fake narratives, but they're real. Now, this thing became sin to the people, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan. And again, this is way up north. It's up by Lebanon. And he made houses on the high places. And he made priests from among the people who were not of the sons of Levi. So he makes the high places. He puts in his own temple. He takes priests. They're not the descendants of Aaron. They're not qualified to be priests. They're not the sons of Levi. They're not from the tribe of Levi. Excuse me again. He makes it up. He decides he wants to do his own thing. And no one in their right mind can give credibility. If you have any biblical knowledge, you know that you just cannot give credibility to this foolishness. When the Lord says do something, we do it. When he gives us instructions, he gave the children of Israel very clear instructions on how they were to live, what they were to do, how they were to present themselves when they came into his presence. He gave them his commandments, 613, according to Rambam, as he breaks them down, if you study any Jewish history. The point is they know exactly what to do, and this is not kosher, to say the least. So it's far from being kosher. And then after he makes houses on the high places and chooses false priests from among the people who are not legitimate priests, he then institutes a feast. It says in verse 32, Jeroboam instituted a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like the feast which is in Judah. And he's talking about the feast of Sukkot on the 7th month. So false priests, false temples, false idols, false everything, and now a false feast, which is on the wrong day. And he does it, of course, to have the people come down and worship at his temples so that they won't go to Jerusalem and they won't do the right thing that the Lord has commanded them to do. He went up to the altar, thus he did in Bethel, back in verse 32, sacrificing to the calves which he made, and stationed in Bethel the priests on the high places which he had made. Then he went up to the altar which he had made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, even the month which he had, and this is the crux of it all, devised in his own heart. Good intentions aren't good enough. And he instituted a feast for the sons of Israel and went up to the altar to burn incense. And again, this reminds you, and I can't define it, but it lets you know or gives you kind of an idea of the strange fire that the Lord struck down the Nadab and Abihu for their offering of strange fire when they refused to do what the Lord said. Now, I don't know what strange fire is, and I've read up on it and I've studied it. I know what all the scholars say. Nobody really knows. We just speculate. But the point is about strange fire, we know that it was not what the Lord commanded, and that's good enough. Do what the Lord commanded. They had his instructions. These were priests. They should have known better, and Jeroboam should have known better. So, as I said earlier, his rebellion is no different than the rebellion of the children of Israel when they were delivered out of Egypt. They kept on grumbling. They kept on complaining to Moses. Oh, you had to bring us to the desert to die. You schlepped us out here. We could be in Israel eating Egypt eating leeks and onions. Oi, our breath could stink. That's a pretty poor excuse for wanting to go back to Egypt. Leeks and onions. Again, they had seen the plagues. They had seen the hand of the Lord. They had seen his Shekinah glory. They saw his kavod. They saw all that he presented himself to them. They saw his pillar of fire and cloud of smoke. And yet they still keep complaining. Then they complain to Moses. Moses, you think you're the only one who knows better. We know just as much. Miriam and Aaron, they come up, they complain. What happens to Miriam with the leprosy? And it's not good. Because the Lord says, and we must do. We don't have an excuse when we clearly know the commandments of the Lord and we refuse to obey. That's problematic. So his rebellion is no different than the rebellion of the children of Israel when they were delivered from Egypt. They also worshiped the golden calf in the name of the Lord. And actually, they both called the golden calf by the name of the Lord. To this day, that boggles my mind they could be this rebellious against the Holy One of Israel. Jeroboam sets up idols and a false temple, reiterating again, he chooses his own illegitimate priests, invents a feast to resemble Sukkot on the wrong day of the wrong month. And to summarize it, again, I'll say it, he did it his way, him and Frank Sinatra. All right, so the question you might ask is, this is where I get maybe a little controversial with you. We've agreed to the fact that it shouldn't have happened. We agreed that he had no right to make it up as he went along. So how does this blog have anything to do with Christmas? I won't belabor this point. Well, if the Lord changes not, Malachi 3:6, if he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, Hebrews 13:8, if he did not endorse the actions of Jeroboam to do his own thing in regards to building a pagan temple with a golden calf and in establishing a contrived holiday of his own invention, then why would the Lord tolerate the same actions in the church? Sorry. Well, actually, I'm not. All right. Good intentions are not good enough. I understand there's a lot of people out there who will say, and we know he wasn't born on December 25th, but we're celebrating his birth anyways. Our intentions are good, but they would never celebrate a biblical feast, which are all prophetic of his coming. Whether he was born on Sukkot or not, some speculate, we don't know. And I'm not penalizing anyone, and I'm not trying to condemn anyone, but I am asking you to seek in your heart. If this, and I'm gonna use the word holiday, Christmas, in all its pollutions and all of its contrived events, you can say my motivation is to celebrate the King of the Jews. My motivation is to celebrate the birth of Messiah, but we're not commanded anywhere in the scriptures to celebrate the birth of Messiah. The Jews don't celebrate in the ancient culture. They don't celebrate births. They celebrate the anniversary of the death to commemorate. It's called Yahrzeit in modernistically now. We celebrate the anniversary of the death to remember the life of that person. This was an event that the pagans did. And I'm not going to go into all the paganism of Christmas and where it comes from, the December 25th, the Saturnalia. I've done that in other blogs written. And you can read on that all through the internet. But the point is, we know he wasn't born on December 25th. And we know we're not commanded to celebrate his birthday. And we know that there's nothing but paganism syncretized into it. We also know that it is a holiday that was invented by the Catholic, well, not invented totally, but codified and brought into existence and solidified into the culture through the Catholic Church. And I'm not a Catholic, and I don't believe in the Pope, and they have no authority over me. And why do I want to celebrate a Catholic feast instead of celebrating the biblical feasts? The biblical feasts, each and every one of them, prophesy the coming of the Messiah. Every last one of them. And I've gone over them in the past, not going to do them now. And you can say anything you want about all of your good intentions, but if you're celebrating this holiday, which has nothing to do scripturally, has no place in scripture. If you read Jeremiah 10, which I'm not going to do right now, you'll see that it's very clear. Read it, the whole chapter. It's an amazing chapter that talks about decking the tree, cutting it down, and decorating it with gold and trim and etc. These customs that happen come from paganism. Again, not going to get into all of it tonight. Maybe if you want, I'll send you my blog. If you request, I've written all about those pagan customs. But again, good intentions are not good enough. When we have the word of the Lord with the clear instructions on what we are to do and to not do. When we look at Xmas, and I'm not going to even call it Christmas because his name wasn't Christ. His name was Yeshua. In his last name, he didn't have one. He never called his mom and dad Joe and Mary Christ. It was Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua the Messiah. He was Yeshua HaNazaret, Yeshua the Nazarene, Yeshua ben Yosef, son of Joseph. When we look at Xmas, it clearly has all the same characteristics that were present during the time of Jeroboam. And if you have something that you can speak on and give me a counterpoint biblically, if you can tell me something biblically, I'll accept it. If you can give me a reason why I should celebrate this biblically, I'll be more than happy to make an apology. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. But if you can't, then I'm asking you to seriously consider, why are you celebrating this holiday and not celebrating the biblical holy days from Leviticus 23, which prophesy the coming of our Messiah? Now, I think it's a good time to stop. I see we've had some people join in. It's good to see you all. Jim McClendon, Tiffany, David, Messina. Hey, David. Lincoln, and Michael Knight. It's good to see. Did I miss anybody else? Eric Frankie joined. Oh, Eric, long time no see. And who else? Jennifer Kim. Hi, Jen. Miss you all. Barry Hansen joined in. Nicole Laruda. All right. Kind of like Romper Room. Romper, Stomper, Domper, Do. But I'm going to end right here. I hope you have a wonderful week. As we say in Hebrew, Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful, blessed week. And may the Lord bless you. And consider these things. All right. Shalom. in Messiah, peace in Messiah. Shalom uvracha b'Yeshua. Peace and blessings in our Messiah. And I will talk to you hopefully soon. I'm going to end the video, as I always traditionally do, with a stupid look.